There was a time when people didn't believe Jungkook would become what he is today. The world had seen countless young idols rise and fade, but few imagined that the youngest member of BTS, a boy who once stood quietly in the background, would one day stand on the world stage, receiving the most prestigious honor ever given to a musician from Asia. What began as whispers of doubt became an anthem of triumph, and every moment of resistance only sharpened the weight of his eventual victory. The truth is, people laughed because they didn't understand the scale of his ambition. He wasn't chasing validation. He was building an empire of sound, discipline, and authenticity. Long before the world gave him its highest honor, Jungkook was already living like someone who knew where he was headed. His success wasn't accidental, it was engineered, crafted with intention that very few artists ever sustain. Jungkook's journey began under the bright lights of K-pop, an industry where perfection is a demand, not a request. He entered the scene as a teenager, surrounded by older, more experienced members, and the expectations were crushing. Yet, from the start, he wasn't trying to fit into the mold. He was quietly redefining it. What many dismissed as youthful obedience was actually focus. He was learning, absorbing, waiting for the moment to transform raw potential into unmatched command. For years, his critics framed him as just another idol, a performer built for choreography rather than legacy. But while others were satisfied with temporary fame, Jungkook was studying the anatomy of greatness. He practiced longer, watched deeper, and chased precision in every performance. The difference was invisible at first until it wasn't. The same people who once labeled him an over-polished product eventually realized they were witnessing the making of a global force who would not only represent Korea but reshape the idea of pop itself. Every artist faces skepticism, but Jungkook's was rooted in underestimation. People didn't see how a soft-spoken boy could dominate an industry built on noise. Yet he did, by mastering silence, by letting the work speak. Each song, each performance, and each milestone dismantled the narrative that his fame was borrowed from BTS. Instead, he proved that his artistry could stand alone, precise, commanding, undeniable. The shift began when Jungkook started releasing solo material that carried his fingerprint, not the sound of a label, not the echo of a group identity, but the pure tone of an artist who had something to say. From 7 to Standing Next to You, his voice cut through the digital age's saturation of music with a clarity that felt almost analog, human, intentional, exact. He wasn't chasing trends, he was building resonance. The industry had its metrics: charts, streams, followers. Jungkook had something else: impact. His music didn't just perform well, it lingered, staying in people's heads and hearts long after release. That persistence of influence is what separated him from others who peaked with virality but disappeared with the next algorithm shift. His songs didn't just reach audiences, they stayed there. And then came the moment that changed the conversation entirely: his nomination and eventual win of the world's highest honor in music. The award wasn't just about a song or a year's success. It was about cultural weight, about shaping global consciousness. When his name was announced, it wasn't just Korea celebrating, it was the sound of a borderless audience, acknowledging that pop, in its truest form, had found a new face. Jungkook's victory redefined what it means to represent a generation. It wasn't a victory of fan numbers or streaming data, it was the validation of artistry that transcended systems. He didn't win because he was the most famous. He won because he was the most complete. That's what critics often missed. Fame fades, but precision doesn't. The world's highest honor doesn't bow to popularity, it bows to mastery. His performance at the awards ceremony, felt like a full circle, a visual representation of years spent refining his craft. Every movement was exact, every note deliberate, every silence intentional. He didn't need to shock, he simply existed at a level that made the audience watch differently. What others tried to manufacture, Jungkook embodied naturally. His presence wasn't loud, it was inevitable. The award solidified him as more than an idol. It placed him among those who create cultural memory artists, whose work doesn't just entertain, but defines eras. For an Asian artist, for someone who began in a language not native to the Western mainstream, the win was seismic. But for Jungkook, it was never about being the first. It was about being the standard. If there's one reason he reached that summit, it's precision. Jungkook operates like a craftsman, not a celebrity. Every performance, recording, and public appearance reflects control. He doesn't rely on spectacle, he relies on accuracy. That level of discipline doesn't happen by accident, it's built from obsession, and that's what makes his success feel earned, not awarded. His dance lines are mathematical, his vocals technically advanced, his stage presence calculated to the millisecond. Yet, despite all that structure, his delivery feels natural, almost effortless. That paradox discipline wrapped in ease is what separates Jungkook from his peers. He doesn't perform for applause, he performs for the integrity of the craft itself. And that's why people who once mocked him can't ignore him now. When an artist rises on the strength of attention, time erodes their fame. But when an artist rises on precision, time becomes their ally. Jungkook has reached that stage. Every year, his artistry tightens, his global reach expands, and his brand deepens. The world isn't watching him grow anymore, it's watching him reign. Many assumed Jungkook's greatness came from luck being in the right group, under the right company, with the right fans. But that's the myth built by those who measure art by circumstances instead of character. What truly set him apart was consistency. Even when BTS reached its global peak, Jungkook didn't rest. He kept studying his own weaknesses. He reinvented his sound, improved his English diction, refined his tone. He treated every success as a rehearsal for something bigger. That kind of hunger isn't born from ambition alone. It comes from a belief that greatness must always evolve. And that's the difference between artists who win once and those who win history. Jungkook belongs to the latter. His victory wasn't surprising to those who truly paid attention. It was inevitable. The laughter, the underestimation, the skepticism, all of it built the atmosphere for a story that the world now quotes as proof of persistence. His career arc isn't just impressive, it's instructive. It shows what happens when talent is guided by vision, not validation. When the world awarded him its highest honor, it wasn't only acknowledging a career, it was endorsing a shift in perspective. For decades, global music recognition was shaped by Western dominance. Jungkook's win disrupted that hierarchy. It proved that excellence isn't cultural, it's universal. And that universality was something he earned, not by assimilation, but by authenticity. He didn't change himself to fit global standards. He made the world adjust to his. That's a rare kind of influence, not just being accepted, but redefining what's acceptable. Jungkook's artistry bridges cultures not by translation but by resonance. He doesn't need to explain his music. He makes people feel it, regardless of language. That's the purest form of communication, and it's why his recognition carried more weight than any record or chart position. The moment he held that award wasn't just symbolic of personal victory. It was the rewriting of what global success looks like. He stood there as proof that precision, consistency, and authenticity can outlast any system built to limit them. After his win, the conversation around Jungkook changed permanently. The industry that once called him lucky now studies him. Other artists reference him not as competition, but as a benchmark. The term idol no longer captures his scale. He's a modern phenomenon. Yet what remains most striking is how he carries that status. Quietly, without excess, without the noise of ego. His silence has always been his weapon. While others explain their greatness, Jungkook demonstrates it. And that's why his story resonates across borders. It's not about celebrity. It's about endurance. He didn't win the world's highest honor by chance. He earned it through thousands of hours no one saw, by making excellence his habit long before anyone was watching. When people laughed, he worked. When they doubted, he refined. When they tried to box him in, he built something too large for containment. The honor he holds now isn't just an award. It's a mirror reflecting not only who he is, but who the world underestimated. After his global win, major record labels, producers, and directors began recalibrating their strategies around what Jungkook represented. Suddenly, the conversation wasn't about how to imitate Western trends, but how to create universality without losing authenticity. The blueprint had shifted. American producers started studying the way Jungkook integrates melody and minimalism, how his vocal performance can dominate a track even without heavy production. His attention to tonal clarity became a case study in balance between technique and emotion. It wasn't about adding more. It was about removing what's unnecessary until only precision remains. The global industry had believed that English language dominance was an unbreakable law. Jungkook disproved that. His success showed that listeners crave authenticity more than language familiarity. A melody sung with truth transcends translation. That insight changed not just marketing strategies, but mindsets. The result? More artists worldwide began to experiment with their native sounds, unafraid to mix languages, tones, and styles. They watched Jungkook and realized that global resonance doesn't come from imitation, it comes from intention. For Jungkook, the win wasn't a surprise. Those close to his journey understood that he never worked for trophies. He built his career around craft, the belief that excellence itself is the destination. That's why when the honor finally came, his reaction wasn't theatrical. It was composed, calm, and deeply centered. To him, recognition didn't change the mission. It confirmed it. Jungkook knew that every stage he performed on, every lyric he sang, every note he perfected was preparing him for a moment when the world would have no choice but to see him clearly. The award didn't create his greatness, it revealed it. And that's what makes his story timeless. The narrative of someone underestimated, laughed at, doubted only to rise through discipline rather than drama is what connects Jungkook to every listener who's ever been overlooked. His victory became symbolic not only for Korean music, but for anyone who's ever been told to stay in their lane. Since his win, institutions have started rethinking what cultural leadership looks like. Jungkook's career became a reference point for authenticity in the modern era. He represents a kind of success built not on controversy or spectacle, but on credibility. Brands, directors, and even educators have cited his work ethic as a case study in global excellence. Universities in cultural studies have begun incorporating analyses of his impact not as pop trivia, but as evidence of how artistic focus can dismantle global boundaries. His name now carries the same academic weight once reserved for legendary figures who shaped global media narratives. And what's most striking is that he achieved all this while remaining remarkably private. Jungkook never needed chaos to fuel relevance. He built longevity on quiet perfection. In a world obsessed with speed and noise, that patience became his rebellion. Every generation has an artist who shifts the world's rhythm. Jungkook did it by standing still, focused, methodical, and unwavering. While the world discussed the headlines, what lingered beneath was something deeper, the emotional echo of his journey. His story resonated not just because he succeeded, but because he did it without bending himself to fit expectations. He proved that purity of purpose outlasts every distraction. People who once mocked his discipline now study it. They see how his silence was never emptiness, it was concentration. How his calm wasn't detachment, it was control. The laughter that once surrounded his early career has turned into applause, not of pity, but of respect.